Does this thing still work? I can't see the red flash. Oh, I'm on. Okay. Kevin Bahl re-signed recently to a 2-year deal. And what are his expectations and my expectations going into next year for our young, big defenseman? We have a lot to talk about in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody. Did I press the right button? Here we go.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. I know it's been a minute, but for those of you who didn't know, I was on vacation, so I was away for over a week. That's why there were a lack of episodes for the last few days. I did my best to try to give you guys some content as the month of July was wrapping up. I spoke with Christy Flannery, did a 2-part episode with Jersey Joe, Sam Wu, and I also gave you guys some bonus episodes, but I am back, and this is the first episode for the month of August. And speaking of August, this is the part of the offseason where things start to slow down a little bit, and now teams are kind of past in regards to trying to sign players or trade for players. I know we just saw a trade a few days ago for Erik Karlsson, but now that domino piece has fallen, I think it's safe to say that a lot of teams are going to be taking it easy until training camp, preseason, and the start of the new NHL season is in full swing. So as you guys know, I usually post episodes 5 times a week, but since now, once again, we're kind of at a slow part in the offseason for the month of August, expect only 3 episodes per week, and it's going to carry over into September for a few weeks, but by then, training camp will be right around the corner, preseason. I think some prospects will start to report. So once again, the quantity of episodes is going to go down for the time being, but I am still here to try to give you guys the up-to-date news on the New Jersey Devils. And while I was on vacation, the news was pretty light for the most part. The only major thing involving the Devils was them extending Kevin Bahl. So that's what we're going to focus on for today's episode. So I was able to sneak away from my vacation for about 10 minutes. I attended the Zoom press conference for Bahl. I was able to ask him a few questions. So like I do with every free agency signing, trade, major news, whatever the case might be, I'll play you guys the sound bites throughout the entirety of the episode. In segment 1, I'm going to read you guys the press release. Segment 2, we're going to focus more on the skill set for Bahl. So this is a topic that we're going to revisit because I talked about Bahl and his overall impact with the Devils just a few months ago after the Damon Severson trade. And then in the third and final segment, we're going to talk about some goals and expectations I have for Bahl going into the new year. And once again, we're going to hear from the word of mouth. We're going to hear from Bahl himself. So let's start with the press release courtesy of the Devils PR team. So the Devils announced a few days ago that they re-signed defenseman Kevin Bahl to a 2-year contract worth $2.1 million with an annual average value of $1.05 million. Now, if you guys recall, on July 1st, the only player that the Devils extended a qualifying offer to was Kevin Bahl. So that meant players like Michael McLeod, Nathan Bastian, and Jesper Boquist became unrestricted free agents. Now, that sort of set the precedent as to what the future was like for Boquist and his involvement with the Devils, which was no involvement at all. Now he's with the Boston Bruins organization. And obviously the Devils were able to retain both McLeod and Bastian. But it was a smart move by Fitzgerald because it was best to try to work something else out with McLeod and Bastian. We knew that they were going to return, but I think a lot of people were just a little concerned is like, why are we only extending a qualifying offer to Bahl? But everything got worked out. Bahl's back, McLeod's back, Bastian's back. But digressing a little bit, that was really the only major news that happened on July 1st when the free agency period started throughout the NHL. Bahl appeared in his 3rd NHL season with New Jersey and played in a career high 42 games for the 2022-2023 season. He stands 6'6". He weighs 230 pounds. As my buddy Jersey Joe likes to describe him, he's sort of like a Sasquatch kind of figure. posted a career-high 8 points, 2 goals, 6 assists, and 35 minutes in the penalty box last season. Bahl also recorded his first career fighting major after he squared up with Boston forward Trent Frederick. I was actually in attendance for that, so that was kind of cool to see. That happened on December 28th. He earned his second of his 2 career point streaks when he logged 2 assists from February 23rd to February 25th. Bahl's 6.52 hits per 60 minutes ranked second for all New Jersey defensemen who played in more than 10 games during the 2022-2023 regular season. So I did not know that. The left-handed defenseman made his postseason debut in the 2023 Stanley Cup playoffs and was one of 10 Devil skaters who earned their first career postseason point. Bahl played in 11 of the team's 12 playoff contests and averaged 13 minutes and 31 seconds of time on the ice. The blue liner also recorded his first career postseason fighting major in Game 5 against New York Rangers, squaring off with forward Barclay Goodrow. We all know that famous picture. I actually tweeted that out when it was announced that Bahl had re-signed with the Devils because Bahl gave Goodrow a pretty nasty right hook. And unfortunately for Goodrow, Bahl's just twice his size. So Goodrow stood no chance. But like I said in that episode recapping the game months back, I knew what Goodrow was trying to do. He was just trying to get a rise out of his teammates because the Rangers were pretty down bad and it was looking bleak for them as the series progressed. But we're not here to talk about the Rangers and Devils. We're here to talk about Kevin Bahl. So my thing for Kevin Bahl going into next year, and I said this especially with the departures of Ryan Graves and Damon Severson, I think it sort of jumpstarts an opportunity for Bahl to eat up some of those minutes, be given a bigger role, because what it doesn't say in the press release was that Damon Severson and Kevin Bahl were 2 of the more consistent defensemen for the Devils, because I talked about how Severson, his offensive production went down a little bit, but he was still able to maintain his role on the roster because he was doing the little things correctly in order to help the Devils win. And that sort of rubbed off on Bahl a little bit. And they were just a good dynamic duo during the playoffs, but a lot of people just didn't seem to realize it because they're not the most exciting players. They're not the most exhilarating players. But at the same time, Bahl and Severson were able to hold down the fort defensively, and they did their job. Going forward, we're definitely going to see Bahl progress more as a player, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the episode. But I did not ask Bahl this question at the press conference. James Nichols of New Jersey Hockey Now asked him this. Basically talked about how prepared is Bahl going into next year now that he has some more experience under his belt, whether it was participating in the postseason or maybe seeing his role increase as the season progressed. Here's what Bahl had to say in response to James Nichols.
Last at exit interviews, you mentioned, you felt that you really started to belong in the lineup as an everyday player around the Florida Tampa trip. How prepared do you feel now moving into next season, especially given the fact, like we mentioned earlier, minus 2 guys like Damon Severson and Ryan Graves, for you to be expected to be in the lineup full time?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel prepared, but I wouldn't say I feel comfortable. I mean, I want to come in with the same mindset I had last year, where it was you just got to fight for every inch. So I do feel very prepared, but I don't feel at all comfortable.
Now, the interesting thing that Bahl said during that soundbite was that he was not comfortable. And I think he knows that even though it's right there for him, it's there for him on a silver platter, he knows that he still has to show out and he has to hold his end of the fort, because if he has lackluster performances, he knows what could potentially happen. So let's go with some recent examples for the Devils, because I talked about the job security for Alexander Holtz. I haven't personally given up on him, but during exit interviews, the Utica Comets organization and also people of the Devils front office had a sit-down conversation with Holtz, and they had that serious discussion, which was, you need to step up your game, otherwise you're going to be benched or you might be traded away. Let's look at another player who had moderate expectations going into the new year and unfortunately wasn't all that consistent, and that was Fabian Zetterlund. Because if you guys recall, a lot of people were hyping up Fabian Zetterlund, and it was a big discussion. Who was going to make the opening night roster? Was it going to be Holtz or was it going to be Zetterlund? And unfortunately, come mid-season, Zetterlund was a healthy scratch at times for the Devils. And when asked about it, Lindy Ruff just said Zetterlund wasn't performing well. He wasn't doing what the team needed to do in order to win. So he was a healthy scratch. And then come the trade deadline, he was dealt away. He was utilized in that Timo Meier trade. So I think Kevin Bahl sees what happens to these young guys, because unfortunately for him, and I don't know like what his mindset is in this matter, but the Devils are competing now. They're trying to make deep playoff runs from here on out. So they're no longer rebuilding. So the patience and the tolerance for rookies and young players sort of goes out the door. So Bahl knows that he has to step up his game. He has to show consistency. He has to do what he was able to do during the playoffs, or possibly maybe Bahl will hear himself in trade discussions. But I like his mindset, which is he says that he's not comfortable. He knows that he still has some work to do. He has to develop his game. He has to show signs of improvement. He has to do what he was able to do late in the regular season and during the playoffs as well, which is he has to showcase his skill set on a consistent basis in order to solidify himself as an everyday player or somebody who can be used in the long-term plan for the Devils. And I apologize if you hear rain or thunder in the background. It just starts storming out of nowhere, but show must go on. So in regards to Bahl and his response to saying that even though he was prepared thanks to his role increasing late in the year, I kind of liked his mature answer, which was he said he's not comfortable because he knows the job's not finished. He still has a lot of work to do, but he's heading in that right direction. So we're going to talk more about Bahl and how his skill set was utilized momentarily. But before we continue, I want to tell you guys about a product that I use literally every day. So AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. And I drink it literally every day. I drink it before I record a podcast, before I go to the gym, before I go on long car rides, because I need to be happier. I need to be healthier. My body's a temple. Got to start treating it as such. So AG1 is a foundational nutrient supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. AG1 replaces your multivitamin, probiotics, and more in one simple drinkable habit. Science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in supplement category. AG1 helps you build your health foundation first. So once again, I drink it a lot because it makes me happier, makes me healthier. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. Okay, so let's talk about how Bahl was utilized during the course of the season for the Devils. So some of the stats that pop out to me is that he appeared in 42 games. He had 64 hits, which ranked 11th on the team. He had a defensive point share of 1.4, which ranked 13th on the team. And he had 38 blocks, which also ranked 13th on the team. So I talked about this in a few previous episodes, which is had Bahl played like 60 or 80 or so games for the Devils, then those numbers would have been inflated. So the fact that he's in the middle of the pack on the Devils roster for hits, defensive point share, and also blocks, I think it kind of showcases his potential. And I think if he's just given more time and more opportunities to appear in games, I think we can definitely see a surge in his numbers and his production. And I think a lot of people will start to label him as sort of that underrated X Factor piece that is on the Devils roster once again. So I had the chance to ask Bahl, how did he feel like he was utilized late in the year and during the playoffs? And also interesting fact for you guys, the Devils were so impressed with his response, and I guess they liked the question, that they actually used this soundbite to promote it on a tweet and basically show everyone, like, here's his media press availability. So that was kind of cool to hear my voice on a Devils tweet, but not about me. Once again, here's what Bahl had to say when I asked him how do you feel like he was utilized during the season.
Kevin, my first question for you is, it was quite evident that you played a vital role on the Devils blue line late in the year. I would like to hear your perspective in regards to how you felt like your skill set was utilized during the season?
Yeah, I think I kind of needed to grow and find out like what I was going to do on this team and what I was capable of. I think I came a long way just because I was learning how to play certain situations, what I can and can't do, what I can get away with. And then fast forward a couple of months, going into the playoffs, just learning that being that physical guy, that's a big element in playoffs, especially when you're playing 7 games straight. So yeah, it's a big learning curve.
Once again, if he's just given a bigger chance, if he appears in more games, I think the sky's the limit for Kevin Bahl. He's not going to light up offensive numbers, but that's not his job. His job is to, once again, hold down the fort on the defensive side of things, and he's a big body. It's hard to bully him, just as Goodrow. So I think Bahl definitely, for what it was worth, for the amount of games he was given, I think he made the most of it. And now, for the time being, I think he is definitely showcased to the Devils that he can definitely be used in more ways than one going into next year. So I know that we lost some key defensemen in Severson and Graves, but I think a lot of Devils fans can sleep well at night knowing that you got people like Bahl, Hughes, Nemeth, and a few other defensive prospects in the pipeline, including Seamus Casey, who quite honestly should be converted to a forward, but that's a discussion for another time. So I think he was utilized quite well, and I loved his response. Now, I asked Bahl, like, obviously you lost a few key defensemen, but there's definitely a new identity for the Devils, which is you got a lot of impactful players that aren't going to get their names in the headlines too often. So players like John Marino, Jonas Siegenthaler, you got someone like Dougie Hamilton. If all goes well for him, maybe he could get his name back into the Norris Trophy race. You also got people like Hughes, Nemeth, like I just mentioned, young players who have a lot of upside. And you add someone like Colin Miller to the roster. I asked Bahl, how excited is he going into next year with the defensive core surrounding him? Here's what he told me.
Seeing the growth and development of yourself, Luke Hughes, a few other prospects, and also the addition of Colin Miller, how excited are you going into this season with the current defensive units surrounding you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for our D-core, but especially as a team, I mean, we got to the second round, and I don't know how young we were last year, but I think we were pretty high up there. I remember maybe the year before we were number 1 or number 2, so it's pretty exciting being this young and this talented.
I wish he went into a little bit more detail because, yeah, we all know that the Devils have a good team, but I want to hear more about the defensive core surrounding you once more. So that's why I try to angle it towards the defensive side of things, because we all know about the Devils' top 6. It's loaded, and it's going to be one of the scariest top 6 throughout the entire league, in my opinion. But for the defensive side of things, once again, I had someone say that Siegenthaler and Marino are just 2 random dudes like months back, and I'm just like, they might be random to you, but everyone in the Devils organization knows how impactful they are. They know how important Siegenthaler and Marino are to the roster. So I wanted Bahl to just go into a little bit more detail because, once again, people aren't really going to be buzzing about Kevin Bahl outside of the Devils discourse, and that's perfectly fine. But I was just hoping that he would go into just a tad bit more detail, but he is right. The team that the Devils have assembled, put together during the offseason with their genius general manager and Tom Fitzgerald, I think a lot of people should be excited for the Devils going into the new year. And to use the same metaphor that Toffoli used to describe himself, Bahl is now one of those puzzle pieces that can try to make the Devils a lot better on the defensive side of things. So once again, Devils have a good team, but I think a lot of people are underestimating their defensive core. Yes, they lost Severson. Yes, they lost Graves, but a lot of people are apprehensive about having so many young players try to anchor the blue line for the Devils. But quite honestly, people like Bahl and Hughes were able to showcase their skill set. That's why you get someone like Miller, so that way you have some more options to go to. Because is Shimon Nemeth ready to jump to the NHL? We really don't know for the time being. Personally, I think he was able to showcase what he was able to do for the Utica Comets. So I would be perfectly comfortable if Nemeth made the opening night roster for the Devils. But that's a topic for a different discussion. So in regards to Bahl, he is now the leader amongst the young players for the Devils who are trying to make a name for themselves on the defensive side of things, because obviously he has more experience, and a lot of those young guys like Hughes and Nemeth should really lean on his shoulders. And then you got up and coming prospects who can definitely maybe make a name for themselves. Like, once again, a name that's been trending on Devils Twitter a little bit is Seamus Casey and what he was doing for Team USA. But going forward, I think Bahl will go up a little bit more if he appears in more games. So let's talk about some goals for Kevin Bahl. And before I give you guys my thoughts, James Nichols of New Jersey Hockey Now had the chance to ask Bahl once again, like, what are some of his goals going into next year? And James, I was actually going to ask that question, but he beat me to it. So just a little bit of a joke. So here's what Bahl had to say when James asked him.
Obviously, you signed that 2-year deal, a bridge deal there. What goals do you have for yourself moving forward? Maybe even heading into your next contract, to say to yourself, maybe I can tack on a few more years the next time I get to free agency.
I think a big thing for me is I want to work on being a better PK guy and just being more relied on in that regard in defensive situations. I think that could be a big part of my game and something I was really good at growing up.
Before I give you guys my thoughts, as you guys know, Jersey Joe, he's a friend of the show. He's a recurring guest. He is a fellow writer of mine over at Pucks and Pitchforks, and he actually released an article talking about Kevin Bahl and his production. So here's what Jersey Joe said in a recent article. He said, Kevin Bahl's 15 points and 3 goals per 82 rate last season show his passing and his shots on net are being utilized more than prior seasons. He could eventually spike to possibly 20 to 25 points. On the plus minus, Kevin Bahl is looking at the possibility of a +8 being a positive influence for being out on the ice when his teammates score. And Jersey Joe also incorporated a tweet from AR Hockey Stats. And here's what AR Hockey Stats had to say about Bahl and the new deal. They said Bahl re-signed with the Devils for a 2-year deal, annual value of $1.05 million. This is a very fair deal for both sides in our eyes. Bahl is a good third pairing defenseman for New Jersey. So Bahl said that he wants to have a bigger contribution on the penalty kill, and I wouldn't put it past him. I think he definitely has the tools to try to be a decent penalty killer because he's a big guy. He has long arms. He has a cannon on that stick. So I think my thing for Kevin Bahl, aside from penalty killing, is that just showcase what you're able to do. Don't try to overdo it. You know what you're able to do late in the year, during the playoffs. You just have to be a steady defenseman. You just have to be a rock. You don't have to rack up a lot of points. You got Dougie Hamilton to do that. You got Luke Hughes to do that. You possibly got Colin Miller to do that. So I think for Bahl, just stick to what you already know. And I think another thing that Bahl needs to sort of work on is just while we're on the subject of him just being a better stick handler, try to also demonstrate that in the penalty minutes category, because Bahl ranked 8th on the team in penalty minutes with 35s. And once again, he only appeared in 42 games. So you got defensemen like Damon Severson. They had more minutes in the penalty box, but Severson appeared in 81 games. Siegenthaler had 44 minutes in the penalty box, but he appeared in 80. Dougie Hamilton, he had 50, but appeared in all 82 games. Brendan Smith, he was second on the team in penalty minutes. He had 63, but he appeared in nearly 20 more games than Bahl. So that's my thing for Bahl, which is don't get too flashy. Just stick to what you already know. I think the big thing is, and similar to what Jersey Joe said, just make sure that you're useful, not a liability, and try to get those penalty minutes down, because if you appear in anywhere from 60 to 80 games and those penalty minutes increase times 2, you're going to be right back being a healthy scratch. So that's my thing for Bahl, which is he's going to make the opening night roster. He's not safe by any stretch of the imagination. We've already seen players like Fabian Zetterlund get the boot and people like Alexander Holtz get the talk. So I think Bahl knows that when it comes to young players and trying to perform on this Devils team, he knows that it's no longer a rebuilding circumstance. It's now trying to compete for a Stanley Cup. And if you are more of a detriment than an asset, you're going to be dealt away or you're going to be scratched. So that's my thing for Bahl, which is don't overdo it. You're a good player. We all know you're a good player. Just maintain what you're able to do. Work on your stick handling just a little bit more. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section. What did you think about Kevin Bahl and his extension? And what are your expectations for him going into next year? So I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts. So leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal Twitter page. I am still calling it Twitter. Elon Musk. I am not calling it X. Maybe I will sometime down the road, but it's still Twitter. So follow me on my personal Twitter page at TreyMatt4 or the show's Twitter page at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. So continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again. Got some great stuff planned. Got a big name guest star hopefully lined up. Just waiting for that confirmation. So lots to be excited for on Locked On Devils. I'm back once again.